Hello, fellow chess players. Today we're going to talk about kind of a popular topic. We're going to talk about the great Bobby Fischer. Now, Bobby played in the 1960s and the early 70s, while I played mostly in the 1980s. Fischer kind of comes from a different generation. As soon as the great players from his era, like Spassky, Tal, Petrosian, all those guys, they kind of got old and they retired to be replaced by, Karpov, Kasparov, and the newer generation of players. It happens, there's usually a turnover about every 25 years in chess. But anyway, coming back to 1972, I was just a high school kid, but this, I had never seen chess on the wide rule of sports. This was like a big deal for me. And I was so excited to see Bobby appear on wide rule of sports, playing Boris Spassky. This was, just amazing to me. And it was kind of a life-changing event because that was when I played my first tournament game of chess. And now, I never got to meet Bobby in person, but I had friends who did. Some, like Jim Buff, never said a word about Bobby as they were sworn to secrecy. Now, I knew another very strong player, Steve Brandwine, who actually came from New York and, was a little bit younger than Bobby, but he kind of came from that same era and that same New York, chess atmosphere, which was, I would have to say, probably one of the best places to play chess in because of all the talent there. And Steve, he was a friend of mine. He never really talked about the dozens and dozens of blitz games that he played with Bobby. And the fact is, Steve was so modest because he had beaten Bobby in a couple of those games, but he never talked about it. Now, it was around 1980 that Bobby came to Northern California, the San Francisco Bay Area, and rumors began there was a Fischer sighting. Yes! My friend Peter Biasis, who was a chess grandmaster, was friends with Bobby. And Fischer stayed, this was just a rumor, but he stayed at his San Francisco apartment for a few days. Now, when they played, the score was pretty lopsided. My friend here, Peter, is 2,500, USCF and FIDE, I think he's around 2460, but this is a very strong player. And Peter only drew one game out of probably the dozen games they played. Now, Peter thought his strength was the end game. Bobby pointed out, you made some errors there too. And then, when I asked Peter's wife, Ruth, who was then, around 1980, she was a young and beautiful woman. I asked Peter's wife about Fischer. She told me he didn't seem all that abnormal, compared to her husband. But, Peter was, I think Fischer and Peter were both, maybe thinking at a genius level. And sometimes they had some eccentricities. So when she said, well, Bobby appeared to be no more, abnormal than my husband, then, I go, oh, okay, Now, there was a friend of mine who came by Peter's house to take a chess lesson from Biasis. And Peter said to him, "You know what? You just missed Fischer." You know, and this was a story that my friend has recounted to me to this very day. But anyway, Bobby wasn't as crazy as most people think. But, you know, you can't be normal sitting for 15 hours a day for 30 years, you know, staring at a chessboard. You know. Today we're going to analyze, with the help of the Stockfish computer, Fischer's immortal combination in 1963 when Bobby was on fire, winning 11 straight against Robert Byrne. The combination is of such depth that even when Robert Byrne resigned, the Grandmaster commentators thought that Robert Byrne was winning. That's what we're going to be looking at today, folks. So let's go over there. Now, Bobby had black against GM Robert Byrne in the 1963 U.S. Closed. And this is how the game began. See now, this line that Bobby plays is such like a dead draw. I don't even know why he's playing it. Because all white has to do is just, you know, pretty much. Now see, that kind of breaks the symmetry right there. But if he had played knight f3, you know, I would say this game is probably just going to be a draw. Now it's a little bit asymmetrical due to the knights, but apart from that, it's just dead equal. See how both bishops are coming out? There really isn't, you know, a lot of dynamism. It seems to me that with rook e1 and knight f4, white should definitely try to prevent the counterplay from e5, because white is not in any way contesting this important square, and so black has the opportunity actually to play e5 and really liven up the game. So white should definitely be playing rook e1, knight f4 to try to stop any of this play. Now, so far the computer calls it about an even game, but you see that, you know, black is really lining up for e5 here. So white should really. Now see, there's a little bit of a question of whether black should even play e5, but look what the computer says. The computer says, right on, right on. Here's the justification. You know, if you play e5 and, you know, white tries to take this pawn, then you're going to capture, and then the problem is this this knight is going to be hanging on e2 is going to be hanging. So that pawn right now is not even takeable. So yeah, look at that. The computer says this is absolute exclam. Absolute exclam. In fact, black is now up a little bit more after that move. Exclam. Now, if he plays rook a d1, that's the correct move, then it's about an even game, you know. But look what he played. Played here. Now that actually gets white into very serious trouble, because he's got the knight d3 and the knight e4. That knight is going to be planted almost permanently on the d3 square, so white's already in trouble here. White's maybe lost here. He's got to play knight f4 here, but now this, you see how the computer's evaluation suddenly jumps from minus 1.2 to minus 5.8. Now, the following sequence by black is really one of the deepest combinations I've ever seen, because it just doesn't go a few moves. It doesn't even go 5 moves. It goes like 10 or 15 moves deep. This is how deep this moved. Now the computer says it's over. This is just completely crushing. And so, you know, there's no doubt about the soundness of this combo. No doubt. Now the commentators, who were grandmasters, actually thought, yeah, this is the shocker from Bobby. You know, most people thought maybe you're going to take the rook, but this is really the shocking thing. Even though black is a piece down, you know, due to these, you know, horrible light squared weaknesses. Look at these light squares. This is Swiss cheese right around where the king lives. Swiss cheese. There's no bishop. And so what black is going to do is simply come in here and invade with the queen on these light squares, and there's really no defense. The point is, the knight has nowhere, this knight on c3 has nowhere to go. You don't want to go to the side, a4. You can't come up here to e4. Can't come up here. You have to take the pawn. But once you take the pawn, you got to take it, right? And suddenly, black just has this like monster attack going. Now, at this point, the computer says 6.4, it's over. It's over, according to the computer. So, let's see what Byrne did here. Now, the computer doesn't like that, but clearly, if you had played the so-called best move, you know, according to the computer, let's look at what the computer is saying. King g1, problem is bishop d4 check. Queen has to take, and then rook e1 check is winner. You cannot take the rook, because the queen's hanging. So your king moves, I take your queen, the rook takes d4, and then I simply pick up the exchange, and the game's over. So if Byrne had played the computer's move, it's just a quick loss. So now look what the computer suggests here. Okay, now this is the move that Bobby made during the game, but the computer actually recommends queen c8. So that's kind of very interesting. But, you know, it becomes more and more clear that knight b5 is black's best. But it doesn't really, you know, it really doesn't defend, because queen checks here on h3. King has to come to g1, right? And now bishop h6, hitting the queen and threatening this killer check. This would be over, even if you played the best defense here. But very interesting is what Robert Byrne did in this position. He simply resigned. And there's a good reason why he resigned, because there's no real good defense here. Let's say king comes up to f2, for example. Well then, my queen's going to swoop down here. Then you would probably come back with a knight, you know, to guard the h2 pawn. And now this bishop h6 thing is just such a drag, because I'm coming in here. I'm coming in here with the bishop check, and it's pretty much all over. So at this point, Now see, this combination is so deep, that the GMs that were commentating on this game actually thought that white was winning because he's up a piece. So that's how tremendously deep this whole combination is. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching.